When you stop outsourcing your worth, at the same time, you start trusting your judgment. And your judgment gets stronger every time you trust it. Embrace the failure. Embrace the fact that you tried, right? That's what you're focused on. Not if you win or lose, not if your judgment's wrong or right, but embrace the fact that you put yourself out there. That's how you build self-worth.
Hey y'all, it's Danny C. Welcome to the Happy Life Agenda podcast. I am thrilled to chat with you today. We are speaking to an expert in change. And as we all know, the world is going through massive change right now. Everything we've ever known is being turned on its head. At the Happy Life Agenda, we're giving women the support to seize this opportunity to step into their full power by unveiling their true identity and narrowing your focus to your purpose and aligning all of that with a magnetic and unstoppable personal brand. So this is how you become valuable in the age of AI. When you lean into your expertise, now you can partner with AI and the developers to create a system that is accurate and remains reliable. My guest today has graced the stages, large and small, helping some of the world's biggest organizations create change and develop strong leaders. I'd like to welcome Erin Herman. Erin, welcome. I can't wait to dive into today's topics with you. But before we get started, I want you to tell us a little bit about your stellar career and my favorite story, the moment you knew this is what you were meant to do. So welcome.
Thank you, Danny. It's great to be here. I'm thrilled. As Danny mentioned, my name's Erin Herman, and I have worked in the private and public sectors for nearly 25 years. I started my career out selling elevators and escalators. So I was quite literally paid to help people move up in life, which is always a great job. And after about 8 years there, I went and I worked at the United Nations Children's Fund and worked my way up there and eventually started to lead their corporate partnership development team for the United States. So had the opportunity to work with several Fortune 500 to Fortune 1000 companies to really develop transformational change partnerships to support the world's most marginalized children. So I felt that role was so rewarding to me in so many different facets. Yes. And then from there, I went on to work for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, ALSAC, down in Memphis, Tennessee, and again, continued on the legacy of leading their corporate partnership team. And how I got into keynote speaking was one day down in Memphis. I was leading a pretty large department, and every Friday from the day that I started till the day that I left, I would send a Friday afternoon email. And the email could be around navigating change with charisma, or it could be exuding empathy during exhaustion. There was different themes, and within those themes, I would incorporate a story, and then I would go through and I would identify people in the department that exhibited that quality or that theme for the week. And for the first couple of months, I didn't even know if people were reading my emails, if they found them enlightening, exciting, uplifting, or if they were just simply clicking delete. And then one Friday I was sitting in my office and a woman walked in and she said, "Hey, Erin, is it okay if I take a seat?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "I just live for Fridays." And I said, "Well, I do too. I get to fly back to Kansas City and see my family," which is trying to be relatable. And she said, "No, I really live for Fridays at 2:00 or around 2:00. And she was younger. And so I was, again, trying to be relatable. And I was like, "Oh yeah, happy hour is just a couple hours away." And just tried to make a joke out of it. And she said, "No, I really live for your emails." And she said, "From the day that you've started, I've saved every single one. And I always open them up and hope that my name is in there." And I think in that moment, it just taught me that we can have a profound impact on people and not even know it. So if I was capable of having impact on one person, imagine what I could do in a room of 2,000. And so from there, I decided to make a career change and really pursue a passion that had always come to me, but I never thought I would actually carry forth. And I decided to dive headfirst, and now I've become a keynote speaker, speaking on the topics of change management, women empowerment, self-assurance, and creating positive failure cultures. And it's been so rewarding.
Oh my gosh, how fun and how brave and courageous to step into that like right away. That's so amazing from a single moment and an email. When we talked about that story when we were preparing for this podcast, I just really wanted you to share with our audience because I think it is so pivotal. And what I want to point out about Erin's story is that when you're starting to seek your calling or purpose, you usually can find it in these tiny moments where you're really making an impact, but you don't even realize it. In fact, you're probably making a massive difference doing something that you've either always done or something that you're willing to do for free. Like Erin just demonstrated, she did that email because it meant something to her. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. If I dive a little deeper or I'm listening to that calling, this could be a career. Mm-hmm. So thank you again, Erin, for sharing that. So let's actually start there. The world's turning upside down. We got to change in order to survive, in order to thrive, and change is scary. So I came across your keynote, that the superpower of self-insurance. And that's something that everybody needs right now, especially women, because the territory is uncharted. And, this is an essential skill. It's not about faking it till you make it. It's like what comes from inside. So can you tell us a little bit about how women can harness self-assurance?
Yep. I love this topic and this question because as women, we work in structures that weren't frankly designed for us in the first place when we walk into the private sector in particular. But, for women, it's not about bravado. It's really about evidence. And I talk about this concept called the proof list. And this proof list is really the notation that every time you've done something hard in life, write it down, and, focus on those moments where you did something that you weren't even 100% sure of, or it wasn't a final, polished product, or those moments that you really felt proud of yourself for. We're so busy giving out our energy and our accolades to others, but we've got to instill that in ourselves, right? So you create this proof list, and it's not about becoming fearless throughout this list, right? It's ultimately like remembering who you are, because we forget what our value systems are. We forget what makes us us, because as women and as mothers and as working moms, we give so much to others, right? So this proof list reminds us of who we are, what we're capable of. Yes. And it says, wait, I've done that before. I can do this again. And the beautiful part about self-assurance is that self-assurance is basically a documented history of everything hard that we've done, but you know what? We got through it anyways. Whereas confidence, and I talk about the difference between confidence and self-assurance, confidence is external validation. And women in particular, we defer our judgment to others. We oftentimes say, well, what do you think? Or we wait for people to give us positive feedback. We have been, it's been instilled in women from a very early age on that we need to rely on other people's judgments to feel self-assured. And by creating this proof list and instilling in ourselves those micro courageous wins and decisions and opportunities and risks that we took, we build the muscles to be self-assured long-term.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, because one of the things that exercises that we do for the Happy Life Agenda is kind of going and taking that look back through and saying, like, what are the things in your past that you thought were a failure? And then to what your point you just said is like, look at it and how it shaped you, built character, you survived it. And now what can you do with that? That's such an amazing skill to acquire. And then the stories that women tell themselves and that we've been told, you're spot on. I've been doing a lot of research in that. And it goes all the way back to the caveman days where, they're saying that we just stayed in the cave and took care of the kids and gardened and right. Instead of actually defending ourselves. Amazing. Right. So, well, one of the things, one of the bullet points you had on there was, I believe, stop outsourcing your worth. Can you talk and expand a little bit more on that? Because I, as someone who's, worked in the corporate field, been in boardrooms, I see that happen a lot. And I would love you to expand on that bullet point.
Yeah. Women in particular, we often ask, is that okay? We seek permission, whether that is within the workplace, whether that is, hey, can I go out with my friends tonight? Or, hey, can you take care of the kids? We seek permission on the daily more often than kids, more often than men. Research supports this, right? So when we outsource our judgment, when we outsource our ability to make decisions, because we've been trained to think that other people know better than us, that is a detriment, right? And so when we stop outsourcing our worth, when we stop asking for permission, when we stop saying, do you approve of me? And we start asking, does this align with me? Does this align with my foundation? Does this align with who I am? And this could be in context to a new role that you've been offered, or maybe a promotion that, you're thinking about advocating yourself for. Or it could be, simply leading change management in your workplace. Instead of saying, well, am I capable of doing this? Am I the right person for this role? Say, does this company culture align with who I am? Yes. And does it set true to my foundational values? That is so important, because when you stop outsourcing your worth, at the same time, you start trusting your judgment. Yes. And your judgment gets stronger every time you trust it. And this isn't about saying, I need to be 100% certain, or gosh, what happens if, I can't fail? No, embrace the failure. Embrace the fact that you tried, right? Definitely. That's what you're focused on. Not if you win or lose, not if your judgment's wrong or right, but embrace the fact that you put yourself out there. That's how you build self-worth.
Oh my gosh, this is fantastic advice, because I made this mistake over and over and over again. And I see now that it was a costly mistake, and I do things differently now, but it was definitely a hard won lesson. And, I think about the times that I didn't speak up because I thought that it wouldn't be the perfect answer, or I don't know enough to back it up. But I think in leaning into that, just saying it out loud, and I've been practicing this more, it's like, oh, wait a second, I do know what I'm talking about. And, and I surprise myself in the moment. And so I really encourage everyone to hear what Erin is saying is don't stay quiet. Don't think that you don't have enough knowledge or experience, because that shift can be everything that takes you to the next level. Let's talk a little bit about, organizational culture. And because that's where you ended, is do your core values align with the organization that you're at? And so can you talk about how we can push past the fear, stop holding on to perfection, and lean into saying no to the things that are wrong and saying yes to things that are right, particularly when you're looking for a job?
Yeah. I always talk about micro wins, and in my keynotes, I play Truth or Dare. I ask audiences, who played Truth or Dare in high school? And, people chuckle, but the whole pretense is around daring yourself to be courageous, right? And so I talk about micro courage. And micro courage is really raising your hand even when you're not ready to do something, but you're putting it up anyways. And you're saying, you know what, Erin, I can do this. I don't know how, I don't have the blueprints, but you know what? I'm going to figure it out. Or it could be, hey, my team is going through massive change, and I've got 50 direct reports looking up to me saying, how are we going to do this? And you getting up there and saying, you know what? I don't exactly know how we're going to do it, but I want you all to know that I'm going to walk side by side with each of you, and we're going to succeed and figure this out together. And once you practice these small acts of courage, okay, it builds big actions. And, I think so many times we put our validation in these major monumental life events, or oh my gosh, I went from a director to a senior vice president. Well, what are all the micro courageous wins and moments and decisions you made to get you there? That's what you need to focus on. Because when you start focusing on those micro moments, speaking up, leading change, advocating for yourself, that all becomes so much easier. And in turn, it helps you to grow as a person, and it helps you to push past your fears. And I always say, companies in particular talk about being innovative and wanting to win and encouraging their employees to make these courageous decisions. However, you can't build innovation if everyone's terrified of being wrong. Right? So you can't have the boldness and the creative thinking if there is this fear of retribution on the back end. And that is what perpetuates this concept of perfectionism. Because I'm a firm believer that perfectionism is almost simultaneous with professionalism. And I think the term professionalism gets tossed around so much, but there is a difference between the two. And it's okay to show emotion. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't know how to handle this, or man, this feels really heavy right now. I mean, think about if we were authentic in our workplaces and we really showed up as to like who we are and what we were handling that day, how much that would reduce fear, how much that would support courageous decision-making, how much trust that would build. And it truly would slow everything down in this world where it just seems like chronic chaos.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. On this journey, I've been, interviewing a lot of women on my podcast that have taken that brave step and they formed their own companies. And, part of their core values is that slow down, bring your emotions, bring what's really going on in your life to work. Let's have a conversation about it. And let's build a workforce and a work culture that supports everybody individually and what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, one of them is one of the fastest growing companies in America right now. And that shift to become the fastest growing didn't happen until she leaned into like, oh my gosh, I've got to make this work for each individual. And now everybody's so happy to work there. Everybody's thriving. And I interviewed a girl, I think yesterday on a podcast, and she, makes space for even, women have menstrual cycles. We aren't able to show up the same. And this is proven by the work of Dr. Stacey Sims that affects us physiologically and biologically. And so she has policies around that for her team. And she is also just exploding growth at her company. So I love that you just said that right there, because it's why we have so much anxiety, depression, loneliness, burnout.
I love that concept. And I love how she supports her team and her employees. I talk about this concept of human-centered design. And it's really about the people that are closest to the problems probably have the clearest insights on the solutions. And so often we go into these workplaces where they're already pre-designed for us, or you're just an addition to what already is. Yeah. However, if you ask all of the employees that work there and the team members, hey, are you happy here? Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel like your voice matters? The data and the research shows that if you're designing these solutions without your people, they're not sustainable, right? But if you take a minute to pause and you focus on developing a culture and the workplace and all of the things that incorporate these individuals' jobs, it slows you down just a little bit to listen before you decide, or to test before you scale, or to learn before you lock in on these ideas you want to take forth. And I think, you talked about AI and the environment that we're in right now. And I think we're designed to operate as fast as possible.
Yep.
And speed feels necessary at every turn in our workplaces. But speed without understanding creates significant risk.
Yes.
And we're also tasked to identify risk and prevent it, or to mitigate it, or to manage it. So human-centered design leadership slows you down just a little bit to make those better decisions, because you're bringing your people in, you're ideating, you're testing, and then you're developing with them, not for them.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I'm glad that you brought the AI back into it, because that's exactly what we're seeing is, even though I think it's 37% of CEOs surveyed, or actually it's only 37% of CEOs surveyed said that they think that it's better to be slow and right than fast and wrong. We're still seeing, all the rest, the 70-something% are out there doing it fast and wrong. And that's why there's the massive layoffs. That's why there's this huge panic. But then 69% of CEOs in that same survey said, I know that my workforce is going to need to be, highly experts at what they do, and then be correctly positioned. So why would you let all of your people go? And now you've got to figure out how to rehire and train a workforce instead of making experts out of the people who have the history. Do you have any insights on that? Because that's what we're seeing. And what advice would you have for CEOs and people who are like, okay, I want to make a culture that survives this AI transformation?
Yeah, it's really simple. Engage your people early. Leaders think, CEOs, managers think they've got to have all the answers, and they've got to catch all the blind spots on their own and then make sure that their team is set up for success. And I would say yes to all that, but make sure you do it with your people, not for your people. Because when you do that, you can catch the blind spots. You are up in a 365-degree high level view, right? But if you engage the people that are on the ground or on the front lines, they're going to tell you what your blind spots are. They're going to provide you better data than what an Excel spreadsheet is going to show you. And here's the best part about engaging your team early. You're going to gain faster buy-in, which is really what you're focused on, is speed. But you can't achieve anything without your people. And so it's important to design with them, not above them.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier is like, if you're a CEO or a leader listening to this podcast, is you've got to make space and make it safe for them to have that conversation with you. And so that goes back to your human-centered design. So like, do you have 3 tips for leaders to be able to create that safe space for employees?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think, there's a few things. So first, you want to model by behavior. Okay. So when you get into ideation, when you get into change management, when you get into large transformations, you need to model the behavior that you want to source from your employees in your teams. So it's not a top-down approach. It is simply saying, hey, we're going to trial this. We're going to trial it. We're going to see if it works. If it doesn't work, say that. Model that behavior, that it's okay to try things and it's okay to lose. It's okay to try things and it's okay to win. That's number 1, is model the behavior. 2 is, I would say, creativity doesn't happen in tidy rooms. Okay. So if everything's cleaned up and perfect, you're not going to get creativity from your employees, right? Which is ultimately what you need in order to gain buy-in, to build speed, and to accomplish big results. So I would say allow space in your workplaces for creativity to happen. That could be brainstorm sessions. That could be different interactive, you see these workplaces that have ping pong tables or whiteboards or, different socialized events that happen, or they go out and do philanthropy days. All of that stems creation.
Yes.
All of that stems creativity. So don't disregard those small moments because they will lead to big, big wins and big rewards. And then the third piece I would say is repetition is actually really important. So I just wrote a post for my blog a couple days ago, and I talk about building strong cultures in workplaces, and the fact that oftentimes when change initiatives, for example, are rolled out, people will say it once and then they will, CEOs will give an overview of it and then they'll give it to their managers to disperse. And then the managers will have one meeting where they go through everything, and then everybody is expected to take those initiatives and run with it. But I talk about an example where in one of my teams at an organization I work for, I must have said this same initiative that I was tasked with in one-on-ones, in coffee chats, at all staffs. I must have said it, 7 or 8 times. And after the 8th time, somebody came up to me and said, oh my gosh, Erin, I finally get it. I finally understand what we're doing. And to me, that wasn't resistance and that wasn't incompetence. That was a trust and psychological safety element. So when people feel safe enough to understand, that's when you're winning, right? So that safety and that trust had been built after the 8th time. So I would say, don't get frustrated, but have the repetition, over-explain, and then retouch on those topics in your weekly meetings over and over and over, because repetition builds psychological safety.
Wow. That's a really great point. And I have never heard that tip, but I think it's fantastic because coming from the marketing world, we know that, brand awareness is not built in seeing the ad once and buying, right? The buyer has to see it for like 7 to 11 times to be able to even like notice that it's there. And then they start to move down the funnel and have to have more and more exposures before they take action. So the same thing applies here to teams. That's really phenomenal advice. Mm-hmm. So now I want to shift to the other side of the coin, is like, if you're not a leader, because a lot of people are in toxic workplaces right now. I know I have people that call me and they're like, hey, I can't find a job. I can't stand where I work. What do I do? And so I've had a lot of interesting feedback asking different leaders like you, hey, how do people navigate this? So do you have any insights for like it's kind of managing up, but it's also seems like it's a bit of survival too. So, what are maybe 3 takeaways on that one?
As far as finding new places to work or to having those conversations with your leaders, break that down for me just a little bit.
being able to, if you're stuck in the workplace, because that's what seems to be happening, is how do you make the most of it while, it's going to be, instead of what used to be like a month search is now turning into 6. I mean, I have some people that are on their 11th month looking for a job, and they're in really bad situations.
Yeah. So we as humans are infamous for overcomplicating and overthinking about things. Okay. So the first thing I would say is stop all of that. And then I would say focus on those moments that come natural to you, because oftentimes we downplay things that come natural to us. Now, I'll give examples. It could be encouraging others. It could be bringing calm to chaos. It could be making team members on your team feel safe, right? These are all just things that we do in the coffee break room or in a drive with a colleague to a meeting, right? We just small talk, right? Because we do these things because they feel easy to us, but those are actually clues. And you're probably wondering like where I'm going with this, but your genius, every listener out there, your genius lives in the things you do without being asked to do them. I'm going to say that again. Your genius lives in the things you do without being asked to do them. Your passion also lies in that. Okay. So these are things that you're not being paid for, and you're doing them without even realizing that they're valuable. Okay. So the truth is that most people's careers, so not the ones that you're probably currently in from 8 to 5, but the ones that you're really meant for, the careers you're really, really meant for, those are hiding in the moments that you overlook. Exactly like the story I opened our podcast with.
Yes.
I felt so much authenticity, vulnerability, and sending those emails on Friday just lit me up, right? That was a passion of mine. I also overlooked it for years, just thinking, well, this is just what a good manager does. Until one day I realized, hey, I'm really good at that. Imagine if I made that my 9 to 5, my full-time job, my own business. Yes. So I encourage all of your leaders to think about those micro moments that you do daily that you don't even recognize, bring value to a neighbor, a colleague, a friend, and figure out how you can make a business out of it, because you will be eternally happy and successful.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic advice. So if you feel stuck right now, this is the time to start looking in those moments, because I'm sure they shine a lot more brightly when everything else seems not great. I absolutely love that advice. And Erin's story at the beginning is a shining example of this. So amazing. Thank you so much, Erin. Well, I do have one more question, since when we were kind of figuring out what I was asking last time, is like, if somebody is struggling in this job market to find a job, do you have advice on, how to find a job in this market?
I think finding a job in this market is frankly, and listeners, I don't know if they're going to like this or not, is not too different than 10 years ago. And I'll tell you why. At the end of the day, humans are relationship driven. Okay. So when you think about the jobs that you've had, or maybe I encourage all of your listeners to maybe think about that job that they really wanted, and they found that manager that believed in them and brought them on board, or promoted them into their dream job, right? We all have those people where we're like, oh my God, we are eternally grateful. I will never forget that person in my entire life. I would say, think about how you can be that to somebody else. Think about how you can be that person to somebody else. And that can mean helping a colleague, a neighbor, a friend get a job. Or it could be simply being a gateway to mentor people looking for roles. But all of it boils down to mentorship and relationships. We're all relationship driven. So every job that you're looking at right now, go on LinkedIn, see who you're connected to, see if anyone works there, see if anyone has a connection to somebody that works there. Lean into your relationships. That will drive success. It'll open doors. Think about family members. And even if it's not the organization that you want to work at, but it is in a similar sector, set up an informational interview. See what your competition is doing. See what is helping them to succeed, and take that into a future job interview that you may have, right? So I love LinkedIn. I love leaning into relationships. I love leaning into informational interviews. I would also say take the big risks. Okay, women statistically will not apply to a job unless they meet 100% of the qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
Men will apply if they meet 40 to 60%. So for all the women out there, apply to the job. The worst that's going to happen is you put yourself out there and you tried, but you didn't get it. Yep. But you tried. Okay. So don't hold back. Erase the self-limiting beliefs, toss them out, put them in the trash. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Oh my gosh. That's fantastic advice. In fact, like when I was a hiring manager, I didn't look for the person that had like the most skills and checked all of the boxes. It was like, what are those character skills that you brought to the table? What are you willing to learn? How excited are you for this opportunity? Because you can teach all of that other stuff, but character skills and passion, that's not teachable. So that's really great advice. And then I really like what you said about relationships. I had a career coach when I first started this podcast. I had her on and she talked about like, if you're walking down the street and you see your neighbor watering his lawn, stop and talk and tell him or her what you're doing.
Yes. Yes. Every day I try and set a goal to talk to one new stranger. That could be, I travel a lot on airplanes.
Oh, yeah.
And that annoying woman that sparks up a conversation. You don't know who you're going to meet. Yeah. You don't know. At my daughter's basketball games, I talk to every parent on the bench and I form friendships. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who's going to inspire you. You don't know who's going to influence your life. Tommy Spalding talks about the gift of influence, his book, The Gift of Influence. And he says, in our lifetimes, we influence approximately 80,000 people. Okay. So do the math. That is like the size of an NFL football stadium.
Oh my gosh.
So you have a lot of power. You have a lot of connections. You have a lot of relationships. You just need to take a minute. Don't panic. Pause, think, connect.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's great advice. So I'm going to ask this question and maybe you can help us because I am an introvert and like, even for all the work that I've done, I'd say it still scares me to just, walk up to someone random and strike a conversation because I don't know what the first thing to say is aside from making eye contact and smiling. And if they don't initiate, I keep on walking. So do you have some advice on how we strike up that conversation without being like, hey?
Yeah. Actually love this question. I recommend finding gratitude from a total stranger. It could be somebody that opened a door for you as you're walking into a store. It could be a random colleague that spoke up and just re-advocated a point for you that you were also sharing in a meeting and just re-emphasized it for you. But I say, look for moments of gratitude throughout your day. And the reason I suggest this is because gratitude will totally remove any anxiety that you have. So your brain cannot feel anxiety and gratitude at the same time. So if you search from a gratuitous standpoint, that will then take away any type of social fears that may arise from starting a new conversation. And you simply open the window with being grateful. Hey, thank you so much for opening that door. Hey, thank you so much for re-elevating a point in that discussion. And then you introduce yourself. Or it could be at a social setting, as I mentioned at a basketball game. Hey, I just saw how your daughter interacted with mine out there. She, gave her a high five, even though she missed the shot. That is so kind. Clearly that comes from great parenting. Just wanted to express my gratitude. My name's Erin. Nobody will shut down a conversation either when you are offering an element of gratitude to open it. So start with gratitude.
Oh, I love that. That's so simple. What a thought. Excellent. Oh my gosh, Erin, this conversation has been just absolutely pivotal for anyone that's listening. And for me, especially because it's just these things that we're navigating and you have such, concrete foundational steps that we can take. And we, like you said earlier, we overcomplicate it. So we start to overwhelm ourselves when you take a step back. So that pause that you mentioned, it all just kind of forms together and we can go step by step through the process. Thank you so much.
You bet. Happy to be here.
Well, so I'm sure that people will want to continue the conversation. So where can they find you? What's your website, your socials, and book you for a workshop or a keynote?
Yeah, I'd love to do a keynote, breakout session, workshop, you name it. I do them all. You can find me at www.theerinherman.com. That's my website. It's got all of my speaking engagements, partners I've worked with, clients and topics that I speak on, different types of sessions and engagement opportunities that I run with partners. So jump on there, take a look. You can also connect with me through the website, submit a contact form. I will schedule a call and would love to learn more. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, and that is just Erin Herman on LinkedIn. And I love LinkedIn, as I said, because I'm so just me on LinkedIn. I talked about perfectionism and professionalism, but for me, LinkedIn is just a gateway to be my authentic self. So I talk about my life, my career, my family, what's going on in the week. I just think if we can model that for others, it helps others to become courageous too. And then also on Instagram at Erin Herman. I'll put all of my socials under my podcast outline here today as well when it gets posted. But you can connect with me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and then also my website.
Fantastic. Thank you, Erin. So I'll be also posting all of Erin's stuff on happylifeagenda.com. So you'll be able to find that. And just thank you again. This conversation is definitely going to stick with us. And as you all know, we'll be posting the shorts and the reels on social media. So make sure you follow the Happy Life Agenda, follow Erin, and then you'll be able to jump in the comments and have conversations with us, because once these go live, people start jumping in and asking more questions. And so you just continue to learn and grow from what Erin has shared. So for all of those who are navigating these uncertain times, you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach because you just literally don't know what's going to happen next, and it feels like the rug's being pulled out from under you. You're not alone. Everyone is shuddering at this change, as this conversation showed us today. So the Happy Life Agency is helping women figure out what's next and how to create a strong, powerful future. And the first step is just to have a conversation. So you can book time with me at happylifeagency.co. And as always, I would appreciate your support if you can click subscribe below and leave a review of this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And again, thank you so much, Erin. I was so grateful for your time today and all that you shared. And we'll talk to you guys next week.